it's funny. And if they read it, they'd be educated on the topic a little bit better and actually bring them closer to center line of the idea, just to understand both sides of that. What is hard, what I get a lot of, and what of a lot of people who are internal in America, a lot of second generation, third generation, not even first generation, mostly second generation, third generation, even probably past that. They always say, oh yeah, but it's your government's fault. The CIA dismantled and destroyed all these countries, and now they're coming here. This is just the backlash of what this country did to them. And someone who is, or who was CIA, what's the counter argument to that? Or how do you even see that part of the discussion?
So, this might be surprising. They're exactly right.
Yeah.
That argument is a sound, valid argument, because the United States' geopolitical strategy since the end of World War II has largely been the same. And that geopolitical strategy is to ally ourselves with growing, powerful governments, and then convert those governments to being dependent on American industry, American economy, American financial institutions. Simultaneously, we find those countries that are corrupt, broken, or failing, and we do the same thing there. We flood them with foreign funding. We flood them with loans and opportunities that will bring in American dollars, so that we can then force that country to essentially capitulate to our demands. This is why the United States moved so quickly into Germany and Japan after we destroyed those countries coming out of World War II. Right. It's why we went into the United Kingdom to rebuild the United Kingdom, because the country that comes in and builds your infrastructure, sets your government, and creates your financial base, that is the country that makes you dependent upon their currency, their politics, their trade agreements. So the United States has been doing this since the 1950s. China started doing this when we went to the global war on terror. So the reason China has grown so quickly in the last 20 years is because while we were distracted trying to eradicate terrorism from Afghanistan and Iraq, guess who wasn't part of the GWOT? China.
Yeah.
They spent all of their time mimicking our process following World War II, creating the Belt and Road Initiative, building relationships with foreign countries that were third world countries or countries with struggling economies, making them dependent on the renminbi, dependent on Hong Kong financial capitals, dependent on Singapore, or dependent on Shanghai financial institutions. So that's how the rise of HSBC, the rise of Huawei telecommunications, the rise of the central banking system of China, all of that happened during the 20 years of the global war on terror, because they took a page out of our book. Yeah. So yes, we are 100% reaping what we have sown by destabilizing or making foreign countries dependent on the United States. It's why when you travel the world, everybody wants to be an American, but most foreigners hate Americans. They want to come to the United States, they want to be tied to the American dollar, but they don't want to say anything good about an American citizen, because we've created this weird sort of juxtaposition where our economy and our dream is worth fighting for, but our people are somehow entitled and and ignorant, and the rest of the world is the first one to label us that way.
Yeah, it's always when someone says, I'm like, yeah, but I don't know how to fix that. I know how to fix now. It's such a tough one. Like, I got it. I've read it. I understand it. I've studied it. And all I can say is like, the government, dang it, damn them again.
Well, this is one of those things. There's a couple of things that I think it's changeable, right?
Yeah.
Rocco, I think it's changeable, but we have to ask ourselves a few hard questions. Hard question number one, are we willing to keep tying ourselves to a 4-week or a 4-year rotation of who our commander-in-chief is? Because when you have a new commander-in-chief every 4 years, or when you debate who that person is, or when you politicize whoever that person is, what that means is you can never have a budgetary cycle that lasts longer than 4 years, because the next president changes the budgetary priorities. Well, guess what happens when you have like Russia or China, where you have the same president in place for 8 terms? Now, all of a sudden, you have funding that's secure for a 10-year mission, a 12-year mission, a 20-year mission. In the United States, like 5 years is the longest budgetary cycle that we have. Most budgets only last 1 fiscal year. That means the money that we give you as a Border Patrol officer this year, you have to spend it this year. Do you remember? I'm sure you remember the ridiculous ways that we would spend money at the end of the
Yes,
fiscal year.
yes. They're like, hey guys, we have 30K. We got to spend it. We'll never get it again.
Yes, exactly right. That's the way that we think in the United States. So we can't create deep cover operations like the Chinese can. We can't. Could you imagine
Yeah.
what office would identify a 19-year-old kid to go to spend 5 years studying law in China and then spend another 4 years building their own legal practice in China and then become activated as an intelligence asset?
Yeah.
Who would pay the bill for that?
Yeah. It'd be
Nobody.
scary. It'd be scary because they might, hey, we liked that before, but we're not paying for that no more. So just leave them hanging. Like, oh my
Correct.
God.
Correct. But that's not how our adversaries work. So our adversaries have that long game because they're authoritative and authoritarian in nature. So here in the United States, if we're going to secure a way to compete at the new game board, we have to ask ourselves, are we willing to find a way to fund operations for longer than 5 years at a time? And then second to that, if we are willing to fund conflicts for or fund operations for longer than 5 years at a time, how do we vet the people that we will put into those positions? Because you're essentially putting a great deal of trust in an independent resource that's going to have very little supervision. And CIA used to be an organization with very little oversight. And then 9/11 happened because CIA became so entrenched in feeding its own pockets that it lost sight of the larger mission. FBI was guilty of the same thing. That's why 9/11 was the biggest intelligence failure in history. And from that failure, they created the Director of National Intelligence. They created the TSA just to keep these two organizations in check. So it's a checkered history, dude. And you're right, like, oh, the government fucked up. But what the government needs to do now is evolve.
Yeah.
And that evolution is not going to feel good, just like puberty doesn't really feel good, right?
So long ago, I try and forget about it. I still can't. You know, why don't we as a country, and this is just an off the wall question, why don't we as a country now go back and try and build those countries back up? Is it because we already have a bad reputation? No one trusts us. Everything we do is kind of tainted and like, yeah, what are you doing this for? Is it for your own benefit?
Yeah, we've also lost some of we've lost what the Middle East calls wasta. We've lost some of our momentum. We've lost our influence. We've lost our impact because, 10 years ago, if you wanted a free check, there was only one country you could ask for a free check, and that was us. Well, now China's writing free checks too.
Yeah.
So now every country in the world gets to choose, do I want to partner with the Americans or do I want to partner with the Chinese? And partnering with the Americans means we're going to force democracy down your throat.